Email deliverability. Best practices for inbox. Why inbox placement is now a core revenue lever. For modern B2B teams, email is still the default way an SDR gets attention, books meetings, and creates pipeline. Industry data shows 100% of SDR teams use email for cold outreach, and 42% call it their most effective channel. So when deliverability slips, it hits almost everyone at once. The uncomfortable truth is that sent doesn't mean seen, and inbox placement has quietly become the choke point for outbound. The bar has also moved. Validity's benchmark put global inbox placement at 83.5%, which effectively means roughly 1 in 6 marketing emails never reaches the inbox at all. Even if your sales program is delivered, a meaningful share can still be routed into spam, promotions, or filtered in ways your team won't notice until reply rates fall off a cliff. At SalesHive, we treat deliverability like a production system, not a one-time setup task. If we want consistent results from a B2B sales agency, an outsourced sales team, or an internal SDR org, we have to manage the infrastructure, the data, the content, and the day-to-day sending habits together. When those pieces are aligned, you protect your domain reputation while still scaling outbound volume responsibly. Delivery rate versus deliverability, the metric that actually matters. Most tools celebrate a high delivery rate, but delivery only means the receiving server accepted the message. Deliverability is about whether the email lands in the inbox where a prospect can realistically read it and respond. That difference is why teams can report a 98.16% delivery rate and still struggle with inconsistent opens, replies, and meeting volume. You also need realistic benchmarks so you can diagnose problems early instead of blaming market conditions or bad messaging. In 2025 benchmarks, average B2B marketing emails saw about 20.8% opens and 3.2% click-through, while cold B2B emails averaged 27.7% opens but a much riskier 7.5% bounce rate. If your bounces are living above 5% or your opens collapse across Gmail and Microsoft, you're likely looking at an inboxing issue, not just a copy problem. Use the table below as a quick health check view across the KPIs mailbox providers actually care about. We're going to skip the table here, but keep that idea in mind. Build a dedicated cold email environment and protect your main domain. The biggest avoidable mistake we see is blasting cold outreach from the primary corporate domain. If bounces spike or prospects hit spam, you don't just hurt SDR sequences, you risk damaging customer comms, executive email, and everything else that shares that domain reputation. For any serious outbound sales agency motion, we recommend compartmentalizing cold email so one bad campaign doesn't create a company-wide problem. A dedicated subdomain for outbound, for example, get.yourcompany.com, gives you a safer sandbox to test, iterate, and scale. The key is treating that subdomain as a first-class system. Configure SPF, DKIM, and DMARC correctly. Align your from domain with authentication, and make sure the tooling you use, CRM or sales engagement, is actually sending on the authenticated identity. This is especially important as Gmail and Yahoo enforcement has made authentication and sender hygiene a baseline expectation for higher volume senders. If you're running sales outsourcing or you hire SDRs into a fast ramp, this separation is even more critical. New reps, new lists, and new messaging create volatility, and volatility is what inbox filters punish. A clean outbound environment gives you room to tune operations without putting the entire brand at risk. Warmup and volume governance: how to scale without triggering filters. Mailbox providers don't trust new domains or sudden volume spikes, even when your intent is legitimate. When a fresh subdomain immediately starts sending thousands of cold messages, it looks like a compromised sender or a spam operation, and you'll often see rate limiting, spam foldering, or silent filtering. Warmup is simply the process of proving, gradually, that recipients engage with your mail and that complaints stay low. Operationally, the safest pattern is to ramp slowly over weeks while monitoring bounces, complaints, and reply signals. Many teams find a practical ceiling of roughly 50 to 150 cold emails per SDR, per day, per mailbox once reputation is stable. But the right number depends on list quality and engagement trends. If you push volume before you earn trust, you'll spend the next month trying to recover instead of booking meetings. This is also where channel mix helps. When we pair cold email with cold calling services, LinkedIn outreach services, and well-timed follow-ups, we can keep email volumes conservative while still hitting pipeline goals. A cold calling agency or B2B cold calling services motion won't replace email, but it can reduce the pressure to spray and pray your way into deliverability issues. Deliverability isn't an email setting. It's the compound result of your infrastructure, your list hygiene, and whether real people consistently choose to reply. List hygiene is the quiet deliverability killer, or your strongest advantage. Deliverability is often won or lost before you ever write a subject line. Purchased or scraped lists inflate invalid addresses, role accounts, and spam traps, which drives bounces and complaints and quickly sinks sender reputation. In cold outreach, a bounce rate around 7.5% shows how fragile the channel becomes when data quality isn't treated like a core SDR workflow. Treat list building services and verification as part of your daily operating system, not a one-time cleanup. Validate every new segment before first touch, suppress hard bounces immediately, and implement rules for repeated soft bounces so you don't keep hitting bad mailboxes. When teams aim to keep bounces under 2% and complaints under 0.1%, they usually see more stable inbox placement and fewer sudden provider-specific drops. Sunsetting matters just as much as validation. If you keep emailing people who never open or reply, you train filters that your mail is low value, and your inbox placement will slide even if your data is technically valid. Build an explicit sunset policy into SDR sequences so unengaged contacts are paused, suppressed, or moved into a lower frequency re-engagement path. Write like a human. Engagement signals beat clever formatting. Filters increasingly reward what recipients do, not what marketers claim. Replies, forwards, and "this is important" behaviors are strong positive signals, while deletes without reading and spam complaints are the opposite. That's why a short, relevant, plain text email from an SDR agency-style program often outperforms a polished, design-heavy template that looks like a bulk blast. Overdesign is a common mistake. Heavy HTML, multiple images, and link-stuffed layouts can resemble marketing or phishing patterns, especially from a newer domain. For cold outreach, keep it simple, keep links minimal, and make the call to action easy to answer in one line. If you need to include a link, prioritize one clear destination without excessive tracking parameters, and avoid language that sounds too promotional for a one-to-one conversation. Complaint management is non-negotiable under modern provider guidance. Gmail and Yahoo recommend staying under roughly 0.1% spam complaints and warn that hitting 0.3% or higher can trigger blocking, which means a handful of spam clicks on a cold campaign can create real damage. Make opting out painless, honor suppressions immediately, and treat every complaint as a signal to tighten targeting or adjust messaging. Instrument deliverability like a revenue metric and fix issues before pipeline feels it. Most teams track meetings and opportunities, but don't trend inbox placement, bounce rate, and complaint rate with the same rigor. That's a mistake because deliverability usually degrades before your team notices it in pipeline, and recovery can take weeks. If email drives a meaningful share of your outbound engine, these KPIs belong in the same weekly review as conversion rates and rep activity. Operationally, you want a tight feedback loop. Watch metrics by domain, by mailbox, by campaign, and by provider, Gmail versus Microsoft versus Yahoo. Use reputation tooling where available, run seed tests when performance shifts, and investigate sudden dips immediately rather than waiting a few days. If you're running an outbound sales agency program, insist on transparent reporting so you can distinguish data issues from domain issues from copy issues. Also, document an escalation playbook so the team doesn't improvise under pressure. When you see warning signs, the fastest stabilizers are usually pausing the worst performing segment, reducing volume, tightening targeting, and removing questionable data sources. Once stability returns, you can rebuild systematically with cleaner lists and reply-oriented messaging instead of cycling domains and repeating the same mistakes. Next steps. Scale outbound safely with the right operating system. As inbox providers continue tightening enforcement, the teams that win will be the ones that operationalize deliverability, not the ones who search for hacks. That means align domains and standards across marketing and SDR, consistent authentication, disciplined list hygiene, and a focus on real engagement rather than vanity metrics. It also means acknowledging that opens are noisy, while complaints and bounces are unmistakable signals you can't ignore. If you're scaling, decide early whether you'll run one outbound subdomain or several, and don't add complexity without governance. Multiple domains can distribute risk and volume, but only if each one is warmed correctly and monitored, and only if the team follows the same rules on targeting and suppression. Done right, this creates a stable foundation for pay-per-appointment lead generation without burning the sender identity you'll need next quarter. If you don't have in-house expertise, partnering with a cold email agency or sales development agency that treats deliverability as part of execution can save months of trial and error. At SalesHive, our outbound process bakes in authenticated infrastructure, verification-first list building, and reply-focused messaging, so deliverability supports scale instead of limiting it. Whether you're comparing SalesHive pricing, evaluating SalesHive reviews, or looking to hire SDRs quickly, the standard should be the same. Protect reputation, earn engagement, and measure deliverability like the revenue lever it is.